Hi, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have the iPhone 15 Plus here in my hands because I'm going to tell you what I liked most and least about it in case you're considering buying it. So, as always, let me tell you, don't buy the iPhone 15 Plus without watching this video. Remember that I have available the full review where you can get to know it in much more depth. This will simply be a summary of what I like the most and the least, and therefore if there is something that I do not mention during this video, it means that it is within what one would expect from a device of this price. Neither is it something very good nor is it something very bad. Its launch price in Mexico is 21,999 pesos. On the screen, a reference pressure in dollars in case you want to get an idea, but remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. Let's start with what I like the most. Its water-resistant certification is 6 meters deep. Although it is curious that it has the same name IP68 as what we find in competing devices, but most other devices have this certification with 1.5 meters of depth. So it is very clear that if this device falls into the water, it will surely have a much better chance of survival compared to others. The screen is very large and also has true tone. This is a feature that I always highlight in iPhones because it makes the screen look very natural even when we are in an environment with very warm light or very cold light, unlike other devices. Although in Android this feature is also present, but only in a few devices. The preview when taking backlit pictures is already optimized. This is a point that I consider very positive of all iPhones because on the Android side almost no device shows a preview before taking the picture that looks good. This can cause people who don't have a lot of knowledge to think that the picture is going to come out very bad, so they will almost always prefer to take a picture with an iPhone because the preview already looks good. This camera has stabilization inside the sensor. This type of stabilization is currently only available from Apple and it is really very good and helps a lot in both night photography and video. The front camera can record video in 4K at 60 frames per second. Really very few devices today have this quality in the front camera. And on both the front and rear, the video recording is spectacular, plus great compatibility with social apps like Instagram. This remains to this day one of the strongest points of any iPhone, the quality of video recording and its good integration with Instagram. The action mode is very good when recording, so if you're shooting action scenes with a lot of movement, this mode stabilizes very well. Apple gives you 7 years of updates. That's something that no other manufacturer on Android is going to offer you. So it's a device that's going to age very slowly and therefore also keeps a good price on the market. Through iOS, it's very easy to create stickers and that library you can use in virtually any app. Even compatible with third-party applications such as Instagram or WhatsApp, and perfectly you will be able to insert those stickers while maintaining transparency, which in Android you cannot. iOS also brings a very good restriction feature. This can be especially useful if you are going to buy this phone to a young person or a teenager or even a child, because you can previously set some limits a little clearer that in Android could be evaded more easily. The Find. My iPhone feature is very advanced because the iPhone remains discoverable even when it is turned off. Also, this can give you a bit more security or confidence because it is able to connect to the entire network of Apple devices to try to locate it on a map, unlike Android devices that their Find My Device implementations are not as advanced. The battery life is above the average of devices. We could say that according to my test, it gives you an hour more than what other devices give you. So I think this myth that iPhones are discharged very fast no longer applies for several generations, and this iPhone 15 Plus is proof of that. Very good battery life. In addition, it already has the charging lock in the software. That is to say, if you want to be very careful so that the battery does not degrade so fast, you can activate this option so that the charge only reaches up to 80% and does not go beyond that. Anyway, it already gives you a very good battery life, so it's simply an option that can help you take care of the battery. Or if you are one of those users, for example, who drives an Uber or something like that and always has it plugged into the power, it is highly recommended that you enable that option so that the battery is more protected. The entire Apple ecosystem works seamlessly integrated with this device. That's no mystery because it gives you a very good experience connected to the Apple Watch or connected to an iPad or a Mac. But let's go with what I didn't like. Its main competitor is the iPhone 14 Pro. That is, all the points I mentioned to you a moment ago in favor of this device are also in favor of the iPhone 14 Pro, and even the iPhone 14 Pro has more reasons in favor. and for the price at which it is, they can now become competitors. In fact, Apple no longer offers in its catalog the iPhone 14 Pro, but surely still other official distributors have that device, so I would recommend you more to buy that device rather than buying the iPhone 15 Plus. The screen is barely 60 Hz. I understand that Apple wants to reserve 120 Hz called Pro Motion for the Pro models, but we could at least ask for 90 Hz. However, Apple is stuck at 60 Hz, giving us motions that feel totally of the past if you already tried cell phones with higher refresh rates. It's definitely a bad experience from my point of view. However, if you haven't yet tried screens that exceed 60 Hz, you're not really going to feel much discomfort or dissatisfaction. However, it also doesn't have LTPO technology to go down to 1 Hz, and therefore doesn't have the always-on display feature. This feature, remember, that allows you to keep the clock and even the wallpaper on the Pro models, but it seems that Apple doesn't want to share that option yet with these devices that are quite expensive anyway, so it seems to me a very negative point that Apple does not have this feature here. The equalizer is reserved for Apple Music, and the high-resolution wireless sound is reserved for the AirPods. So, remember that buying an iPhone is practically tying you to the entire Apple ecosystem, and if you want to enjoy the best experience, you're going to need Apple Music and also AirPods. Night mode cannot be enabled manually. That actually bothers me on all iPhones, as it does allow you to turn it off manually if the iPhone felt it needed it and you felt it didn't, but it doesn't let you do the reverse. There are times when I think I need to use night mode, but since the iPhone deems it's not necessary, it just doesn't give you the option. The front camera portrait can be a bit inaccurate, so some objects that are not far away will be out of focus anyway, and the result doesn't look as natural. The ultra-wide camera does not have autofocus, and by only having 2 cameras, it feels like at least the ultra-wide camera has autofocus so that it is also able to function as a macro camera and give you a very good level of detail. But here the truth is that the experience does feel very limited. In both cameras we will see some distortions at the edges of the lens, and seeing that kind of details in such an expensive device is not really nice. The maximum zoom they offer is 10x digital. It may be their weakest point, since in the Android world even much less expensive devices are going to offer you higher zoom, and not just higher numerical zoom but really higher zoom in terms of photo quality. While the 10x zoom on the device has good quality, it definitely falls short for that price. The slow motion only goes at 240 frames per second. In the Android world, you're going to find options of 960 frames per second or even more. That's why I'm highlighting the fact that this one doesn't have those capabilities. The fast camera does not record in 4K. I have commented on this in other videos, and I find this unacceptable. I hope Apple sends an update to enable this new resolution, because I really do not know why Apple has limited the fast camera to full HD. When recording, you can't pause or turn on the flashlight or rotate to the front camera. These are small details that their biggest competitor Samsung does let you do while you are recording, giving you much more versatility because you don't have to be stopping your recording and restarting it to change some settings. iOS does not yet integrate split screen or floating apps. This is something very common to see in many brands in the Android world, giving you more productivity by running several things at the same time. But here Apple has not yet put it. No fingerprint reader. This causes that even trusted people have to go to scan your face, when in the Android world, if you have some trusted people, you can perfectly register their fingerprints and unlock your phone without much hassle or without having to put absolutely all the PIN. In fact, it has few security options. For example, it has no app lock, child mode or smart unlock, which are quite common things in the Android world, and possibly in a few years Apple will introduce them as a nice novelty. It doesn't include charger in the box, and to top it off, it's very slow charging. In my test, it took over 2 hours to charge from 0 to 100, and even the first few minutes are not a very fast charge to say. In 15 minutes, I recovered 20% of energy. So definitely here, the experience is extremely bad compared to other much cheaper devices in the Android world that can charge in less than an hour. Also, it does not include reverse wireless charging. This is another feature that is already very common in the Android world, with which you could perfectly put to charge your Apple Watch simply by placing it on the back of this device, or your AirPods. but Apple still does not put that option and is surely reserving it for a novelty in future generations. Running tasks in the background is impossible. This is due to restrictions that the operating system has. That is, if you put to upload some documents in some application, you cannot leave that application and go to answer some messages, because the process of uploading documents will pause at best or stop completely in most cases. So it really is a device that I see as very single-tasking, not multitasking. And even though it has a very powerful processor, you can't play at more than 60 frames per second due to screen limitations. So it will definitely not be a recommendable option for the most demanding gamers, because I insist, this processor would have the capacity to run games at 90 or 120 frames per second, but the screen will limit this aspect a lot. If you already bought this device, let me know your opinion in the comments. Make me a list of the things you like the most and the least, so that other people who are thinking about buying this device can also read your experience and can make a very well-informed purchase decision. For the moment, this has been all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.